Hello and welcome. What I have in front of me here today is a Saberforge Ronin V2. Now, recently I reviewed another katana-looking saber, and you can tell from the look of this that this is definitely a katana-looking saber. This one and the other one that I reviewed, which was a Vader's Vault Legionnaire, were both designed for dueling, designed with saber dueling in mind. Specifically, they came out of the Saber Legion. Philip Isherwood, the owner of Saberforge, is actually, he fights in the Saber Legion, does a lot of competition work, and this thing was designed with that sort of activity in mind. Okay, so some of the features of the Ronin. It's got that Suba handguard, which again is a really good idea in dueling because blades will slide down and nail you in the hand. This saves your hand. They have several versions of the crossguard available. Some with concentric rings, some with flares like this. We've got leatherette grip. Now, one thing about Saberforge, Saberforge says add leather grip. Their grip is not leather, it's vinyl. So keep that in mind. It does the job well enough, it looks good enough. This is the weathered version, so they've got it in black, silver, or weathered. And another feature of this thing, they offer it with an optional extension. That turns it into a pretty dang long saber that is actually the maximum length allowed for dueling through Saber Legion. Now this thing gives three choke points, here, here, and up here. Pretty solid design, pretty easy to use. This is actually, I think, my favorite Saberforge design. Saberforge is pretty well known for having hard edges and rough spots that are going to mess up your hands if you're using it without gloves. This saber is the exception to the rule. This thing is all smooth. There's nothing on here that's going to catch your hand. It's very plain looking compared to a lot of other Saberforge sabers, which for me is a definite plus. So, katana look, leatherette. This that I've got right here is a hero edition, which means that it's got red, green, blue, spark 2 color in it. So, nice bright saber. Blasters. Let's see if I can get the color change on here. There we go. Color change with a twist, holding down the auxiliary button. Multiple sound fonts. I've done a review on this board before, and after I got some decent sound fonts on it, it's a whole lot more usable than I originally thought. But recharge point, activation button, auxiliary button, all right there. It's a very nice, very usable saber. In terms of weight and balance, it's a little bit lighter and not quite as balanced as some others. Saberforge tends to use very light hilts, and so it gets to be blade heavy, which isn't a problem if you're dueling, gets to be a problem if you're spinning. With this standard version right here, though, it's very usable. This offsets that weight a little bit, the crossguard. It's very usable, pretty well balanced. If you add in that extra extension, you end up having some problems with spinning because this saber gets to be too long, especially if you're gripping it right here next to the point of balance. You notice that it's longer than my elbow, which means that in a lot of spins, you can hit yourself in the bicep while it's crossing over. So not recommended with the extension for spinning, but that is definitely a nice option to have there, and it's good for dueling as well. If you're going to spin it, leave it with the standard 2. Now this thing is also secured with 3 set screws in the top, which is a nice thing to see from Saberforge because usually they only do 1. I've got a crossguard from them, and the crossguard even just has 1 set screw in it, which means the blade after a couple of hits starts to wobble loose. This one, I've not had that be an issue. The blade sets deep, down to about here, before it hits the LED. So it's a deep set, 3 set screws. This thing is designed to take a beating and not have the blade come out. So very good design there. The version 1, version 2, and version 3 Version 2 had the leatherette grip. Version 3 is knurled. Version 1 is, I think, ribbed or something like that. But I like the version 2 because it gives it a more classic katana look to it. Very solid saber. Again, I think my favorite Saberforge design doesn't fall victim to a lot of the shortcomings that some of the others have, like the hard edges. Definitely useful, functional, well-balanced. Ronin V2, hopefully this has given you at least a good look at it. Another thing about this is they've actually downgraded this hilt to be the same price as some of the base models. So this thing used to be one of their more expensive models. Now it's one of their cheapest because I think they finally figured out they weren't putting a lot of machining into it. So decent price, decent feature, decent feel, decent saber. If this has been of use to you, please join me back for more.